Well, for more now on the U.S. presidential campaign, let's bring in Professor Ian Reifowitz in New York. Thanks so much for speaking to us, sir. Let's start there with Bernie Sanders, his win last night in Indiana. Now, Hillary Clinton still has the right numbers to take the Democratic nomination, but it doesn't look like Bernie Sanders is dropping out of this race.
No, he's not going to. Hillary Clinton stayed in the race through the final primary in 2008. I'm sure no one watching this program remembers, but Hillary Clinton actually in the last 6 weeks won 6 primaries and Barack Obama won 3. That didn't stop Barack Obama from winning the nomination or the presidency. Just think of a basketball game where one team is leading by 20 points, and with a minute to go, the losing team scores a basket. It's nice, but they're still losing by 18, and they're not going to win.
Now, what about Donald Trump? He does look to be the presumptive Republican nominee now with Ted Cruz out, something I don't think anyone would have even believed a few months ago. How do you explain the Trump phenomenon in the United States? Explain it to our international viewers.
It's really difficult to explain, frankly. Some of it has to do with the mechanics of the campaign. You heard Mr. Trump talk about the 17. He's referring to the fact that at the beginning of the campaign last summer, there were 17 Republican candidates. They all of them, made a tactical mistake in underestimating Donald Trump. Ted Cruz, for months, well through the fall and even into December of last year, was still speaking in positive terms about Trump. The assumption was that the other 16 would knock each other off, and at some point there would be one of the 16 remaining who would then be able to easily dispatch Trump, who they considered a joke. But he wasn't a joke. He was a serious candidate. A seriously dangerous candidate, but a serious candidate nonetheless. What Donald Trump has done is he appeals to anger. And there is a lot of anger in the United States, and especially on the right in the Republican Party, especially among white voters, within the white community, among less well-educated, less well-off white voters, men more than women. This is a significant constituency within the Republican Party, which is disproportionately white and disproportionately male. There were enough voters there to propel him to victories in the early contests, and as the formidable candidates or the initially formidable candidates fell away, there was simply not enough anti-Trump support to coalesce around one person, for example, like Ted Cruz, who is not a particularly attractive candidate himself. John Kasich remains in the race. He continues to perform well in hypothetical general election polls against Senator Clinton, but he simply doesn't have enough support within the Republican Party because he's not conservative enough. Donald Trump went outside the ideological spectrum. He's going to run to Senator Clinton's left on trade, for example. But that doesn't matter. Within the Republican primary electorate, there were enough angry people to support Donald Trump. And in simple terms, that's enough to get him the nomination.
Well, it gets him the nomination, but it's not necessarily going to get him the presidency. Polls do seem to show him losing to Hillary Clinton. What about the Republican Party in all of this? It must know that that's going to be the case. What can it do at this point?
In a word, nothing. Donald Trump has won more than, or I should say is on a pace to win more than 50% of the pledged delegates, which means by the election laws of the various states, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee. So they have two choices. One is to essentially fall in line behind him and hope for the best, and when I say hope for the best, I mean that he doesn't seriously hurt their chances what are called down ticket races for the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. It looks pretty reasonable to assume that Hillary Clinton will not only defeat Donald Trump, but that the Democrats will retake the United States Senate. The other option they have is, and this would be done on an individual level, is to try to rally behind some kind of third-party candidate, whether it's Mitt Romney. Their preferred candidate of the anti-Trump establishment would probably be Paul Ryan. He says he's ruled that out. What they hope would be in that case is that this would give an incentive to anti-Trump Republicans to at least come out and vote, as opposed to stay home. And if they stay home, you're going to see senators in key races like in Pennsylvania and Ohio, Republican races where Republicans could win. They could easily go down to defeat if Republican voters are so turned off by Donald Trump that they just stay home.
So how do you see this all playing out at this point? Do you see that a Trump nomination would guarantee a Clinton presidency?
We don't like to make guarantees, especially on television, but I think this is as close to a guarantee as you're going to get. Hillary Clinton has led in dozens and dozens of nonpartisan polls over the last few months. We're now into May. Research shows that general election polling by May is a reasonable prediction, in particular when you have two candidates who are well known. There are very few people in this country who don't know who Donald Trump is and who don't know who Hillary Clinton is. I can't imagine there's much either of them could do to change people's minds. Hillary Clinton leads by 10 to 12 points in these polls. Donald Trump is not going to change who he is. Even yesterday morning, before he defeated Ted Cruz and John Kasich in Indiana, he made one of his most outrageous statements. He accused Ted Cruz's father of being involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I mean, you heard me right. This is not somebody who is going to present a different, more palatable, more presidential persona during the campaign. He is going to run as the person who won the nomination for the Republican Party. And that's not a person who can win the presidency of the United States.
All right, Ian Reifowitz, thank you so much for your thoughts on this interesting U.S. presidential race, which just keeps getting more and more interesting as the days go by. Thanks so much to you in New York.